South Africans are once again experiencing high levels of frustration following the latest crisis with Eskom and the rolling blackouts which followed. The State of the Nation address proved to be quite a fiasco, and people are still talking about President Jacob Zuma's new swimming pool and how taxpayers had to foot that bill. The economy continues to experience anemic levels of growth following crippling strikes last year, and it's estimated that Eskom's financial and operational woes will further impact negatively on the economy. Corruption amongst public officials remain a concern, as well as high levels of crime. So the question is, do you stay or do you go? Well, joining me to discuss the negative sentiment and frustration experienced by most South Africans today is human behavior specialist Dr. John Demartini. Welcome back to Leading Opinion. Always a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you.
You published an interesting article back in 2008 when the country was experiencing rolling blackouts back then. 7 years later, and it seems as if this cycle is being repeated, but thankfully we made it through the recession.
Yes. Well, I think that just like every individual, every city, every nation has times of, it seems like it's prosperous and other times challenged. And I think that's part of the evolutionary process, part of the growth process. Mm-hmm. So sometimes they seem to be overwhelmingly save the day and other days doomsday. But I think that overall, just like in the stock market, if the stock market is up, people think, oh, that's great, but you're actually losing value because they're overpriced. Mm-hmm. And when the stock market's down, that's actually a blessing because you can buy stock at valuable prices. Sure. So crises are actually opportunities for entrepreneurs to be born, people to go out and get involved, people that make a difference, to organize, to unify. So I think that, I remember I wrote in the article that it was saying that in one of the other articles that were out in one of the papers that the intelligentsia was leaving. But then I thought, well, intelligent people actually look for opportunity in the challenge. That's what it means. Mm-hmm. So when there's great challenges in a society, that's great opportunity time. So people that are generating, when the electricity is being hindered, people creating generators, and there's a business of that. And there's people that are figuring out how to use more efficient energy. Mm-hmm. But every crisis has a blessing, and I see that this is the same thing. And when there's maybe areas in politics that may be on the edge, it means that everybody will get involved and maybe vote and maybe change things and and get involved and empower themselves. Any area of our lives we're not empowered in, people will overpower us. And so if we are not fulfilled in what's happening, it's time for us to get regroup and organize and do something about it.
Yeah, there's so much of merit in what you're saying, because I think what the spin-off following the Eskom crisis in 2008 led to many green energy initiatives in the country, and we're seeing investment into South Africa when it comes to developing green energy. Just this week, the country's first commercial solar power plant was launched.
Well, that's exactly it. I work with people one-on-one, as you know, and many times they come in with these crises. And I always say that anything that they think is terrible, a day, a week, a month, a year, or 5 years later, they go, oh, wow, I'm so thankful that occurred because these are the things that emerged out of it. So it's wise to have the wisdom of the ages without the aging process by looking now look at the opportunities. And the people who can see the opportunities in the challenge are the ones that take advantage of that and are actually the ones that are the pioneers and the people that are actually going to be the intelligentsia. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I think to run away, our natural animal instinct is to avoid a pain and seek a pleasure, to avoid the predator and seek the prey. But our more human impulse, if you will, or our intuition and inspiration is to take the challenges and take them on. I always say that if you're not filling your life with challenges that inspire you, it will keep filling up with challenges that don't. And if society doesn't tackle challenges that inspire them to tackle, to work with them, they'll keep running away from things and they'll keep attracting challenges that don't. So leaving the problem, instead of actually transcending the problem and working through the problem, I think is not the wisest piece. Mm. So I think that there's opportunity here.
Yeah, the other benefit is it takes people away from social media, so we can connect more with each other as well.
Yes. Well, if you look very carefully, I mean, right now there's a challenge in Cape Town. And there's a fire at the recent fire. But there's thousands of people unifying, going out of their way. A lot of service is being done. A lot of caring is done. So we're seeing it right on the spot. We're seeing the challenge and the opportunities going right together and the humanity emerging. So I think that I'm a believer that there's always two sides to it. Mm-hmm. And I think it's wiser to keep your eyes on both instead of see only one side and react. It's wiser to act with a bigger vision.
Sure. Coming back to your article, that article was based on research conducted by a local TV show where they actually spoke to South Africans and determined that there's a lot of negative perception out there. It was also mentioned in that research that South Africans are still very disillusioned because of the high level of crime. But there's so much going on in South Africa right now, and I think we've expanded when it comes to how we've enhanced our international reputation. What do you think?
I believe that's so. I mean, there's been a lot of things happening since 2008. I mean, we had the World Cup, we had there's all these different things that have happened. And I think, I just don't, I'm not one to see a one-sided world. Mm-hmm. I always say that absolutisms are confirmation and disconfirmation biases of perception. I'm always a believer that look at both sides of life. And within the crisis, there's a blessing, and within the fantasy, there's always the downside. Mm-hmm. When you're infatuated with something or somebody or some event, you're blind to the downsides. When you're resentful to something or somebody or some event, you're blind to the upsides. But when you see both sides, you have appreciation and love and proaction instead of reaction. So I'm a firm believer that if we look carefully enough, there's always something to be grateful for about South Africa. And I think that there's changes going on. And if you study politics, you'll see that they tick-tock through time. And so whatever's going on in politics, it'll go the other direction. It'll swing back and forth through time. So I think that the more stable we are in seeing both sides, the more we stabilize society, more stabilize our objective behavior instead of our subjective emotional reactions. Anybody can react, but wisdom is acting and solving the problems. It was Bucky Fuller who said that pollution is future solution. Mm-hmm. The things that we once are terrible are turning out to be opportunities. I remember when I was a child, when I was very young, the Hudson River in New York City was so polluted that fish were just floating around. Nobody could swim in the place. There was no way you could drink the water or everything else. Today they're fishing there again and people are swimming again. It's a different story because we took the problem, we found solutions, we innovated. The schools and the educational system took on the challenge and came up with new innovations, new technologies. And so I'm a believer that those challenges are opportunities. And I think that we're here to use our mind and our body and our inspiration to tackle those things and use them as opportunities in our life.
I think generally South Africans are very self-critical and also, like most citizens of the world, critical of their government. But this is a new democracy as well. And if we have to look back and look forward, there's still a long list of challenges that government has to tackle.
Yes. Well, I think that anything that we hold emotional charge on, emotional resentments on, we keep repeating until we learn how to appreciate and love things. And I know that sounds a little soft in the sense of loving things, but I always say that when you really love something, you see both sides. When you love your children, they do things that you like and you dislike, but inside your heart you love them. When you love your spouse, they do things you like and dislike, but you love them. Well, when people do things in society, even government, if you see both sides, you get to love them. If not, you get emotional and you get reactive. And usually out of that reaction, you're only seeing half the equation. And that reaction creates the opposite reaction to try to get nature back into the balance where we can appreciate and love our lives. If we had only 24 hours to live, we'd say, thank you, I love you to people. Our nation could do the same. If we had only 24 hours to live, we would realize a lot of this is just emotional, incomplete awareness. It's wiser to say, thank you, I love you. There are plenty of things in South Africa worth being thankful for and things to be grateful for. And there's a lot of creativity, a lot of innovation, a lot of entrepreneurship that's emerging. There's a lot of great people here.
Yep.
And I think if we focus only on the sensational parts instead of looking at the inspirational parts, I think we're not seeing the whole picture of South Africa.
I think it's nice to get a perception from outside looking in, because you're not a South African, you're a businessman, but you conduct business in South Africa. You're speaking about Cape Town. About a year and a half ago, I attended a convention, an international investor convention in Cape Town. And at the time, there were several strikes taking place in the country. And the most obvious question to ask them was if they thought this was a deterrent to investing in South Africa. And they actually said, no, it wasn't. They were surprised that South Africans actually regarded that as a deterrent and were skeptical about investing in their own economy.
Well, I think that I've stated before that any time an individual perceives somebody as having something more than them, they will commonly minimize themselves. And sometimes they'll subordinate to that outer force. Because anything you're not honoring within yourself that you see in others makes you play smaller game. And sometimes nations do that. They think that somehow other nations are better or whatever, instead of honoring what they have. And I'm a firm believer is whatever you see in others that you admire, you have within yourself or you couldn't admire it. and to wake it up. So when I'm here, I'm trying to share with South Africans that take what you have and honor what you have. The magnificence of what you have is far greater than any fantasies you may impose on it. And I think that when you do, you wake up with a certainty. We each live by a set of priorities, and when we live by our highest priorities, the things that are most inspiring to, we're more objective, and we're more resilient, we're more inspired, we're more capable of solving problems. But when we sit there and compare ourselves and judge things and live in the shadows of other people and minimize ourselves or exaggerate ourselves, we're usually in this biased mode where we're only seeing half the side and we're reacting and we're not empowered.
Yeah.
So any area of our life we're not empowered in, other people will overpower us. So I think that South Africa deserves to acknowledge what it has and empower itself from that perspective, the people and the nation as a collective. I think that's the secret, because I don't think it even recognizes sometimes, some of the people don't even recognize what it has here.
Well, I must thank you for your time today, and also thank you for investing your energy and resources in South Africa, and thank you for your vote of confidence in South Africa.
Thank you.